Welcome back. This is the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. Today we're here to recap the combine on the offensive side of the ball. We're going to talk about all of the positions, specifically the ones more in depth the Giants are interested in. We're going to talk about players who might interest the Giants, players who were interested in the Giants being interested in, and go from there. So, Nick, I want to start this thing off by talking running backs because although the Giants, since the last time we recorded this, have franchise tag Saquon Barkley, will most likely sign into a longer-term deal. I still think they should be in the market for a running back because you need to get out ahead of this thing. When you resign a running back like Barkley at age 26, it's a ticking time bomb. At any point, he could completely fall off. One more major injury, he's likely done. Either way, he's going to start to wear and tear and run down like we've seen every running back in his late 20s. So why not get out ahead of this? If you nail one of these running backs and they are as good as they could potentially be, you now have them under contract for 4 years of team control at under $2 million per year cap hit. Once again, let me repeat this. Anyone the Giants draft this year, say they take a second-round back who we love, a third-round back who we love, a fourth-round back who falls because this class is stacked and deep and has talent that will last into round 4. If they hit on that player, he will be under contract for a measly $2 million cap hit for 4 years. There's insane value in landing a running back in this class, in any class. So I want to start there with the players that I have listed, Nick, as my RB1 and RB2. It's a little bit different from consensus. I have, obviously, Bijan Robinson as my RB1, but different from consensus, I have Zach Charbonnet as my RB2 over Jahmyr Gibbs, who's the consensus RB2. And for me, Nick, and we'll get to this more when we do the profiles and position breakdowns, but to me, it's not even close. If I was ever given the right to be an NFL GM, there's not a chance in hell I would take a 190-pound back like Jahmyr Gibbs over Zach Charbonnet. When you watch Zach Charbonnet tape at UCLA, it is freaking phenomenal stuff. I love this kid. And he came out and they thought maybe he'd have a bad combine. Maybe he was just a tape guy. Maybe he was just a film back. Maybe he was just someone who was obviously dominant in the entire offense for UCLA when you watch them. But no, he is also an exceptional athlete with the third best RAS score at just under 6'1.5", 214 pounds. Charbonnet ran a 4.53 40-yard dash, which was only in the pretty good range RAS wise, but elite testing, 10-yard split, 1.54 seconds. Insane number for a 213-pound back. 37-inch vertical was great, and a 10-foot 2-inch broad jump. Actually, insanely comparable from an athletic standpoint to Bijan Robinson. With the exception of height, these two had similar numbers in the 10-yard split, actually the exact same 10-yard split, 154. Vertical jump, exact same 37 inches. Broad jump, Bijan Robinson's was 2 inches bigger, but pretty damn close there, or longer, but pretty close there. And then a 4.46 40-yard dash versus 4.53 for Charbonnet. Definite better long speed for Robinson. Different kind of backs, but both of them are the kings of this class when it comes to creating forced missed tackles and yards after contact. And what do I look for in a running back translating to the next level? It's creating yards after contact, and it's forcing missed tackles. Both are triple-digit force missed tackle kind of backs. You could see it when you watch the film. They cut like crazy. They create space. They juke. They evade players. They have insane contact balance. So what did you see from these two at the combine, maybe in the drills, or just that stood out to you, the testing? And is Charbonnet going to move up for your draft board as well?
I have to get to his tape. I watched some of his Arizona tape, and it was wildly impressive. I think he had two 30-plus yard runs. The blocking was really good by UCLA well. But he had one run, the first, I think it was like a 36-yard gain where he had this jump cut to avoid the edge rusher, which gave him this angle to the outside where he was lined up against the cornerback and a safety in pursuit, and he jump cut back inside, made both of them miss. He just doesn't have that true breakaway speed like some of these other backs. I like Zach Charbonnet. I don't know if I like him better than Jahmyr Gibbs. I'll have to do my evaluation on Charbonnet first, but when you have that type of size, when you're 220, 225 pounds, and I feel like he is more athletic than he's given credit for on his tape. Like in a phone booth, I still believe he has athletic. Exactly. Those short area quickness skills that really pop out to make players miss for somebody of his size. Again, like Jahmyr Gibbs, he's 199 pounds, and Jahmyr Gibbs is a different level type of athlete in terms of you get the football in space. He's really exciting maneuvering, and I felt like he put that on display at the combine as well. But those are just two polar opposite type of backs in terms of what you can do with them. I do think Gibbs will be a really good athlete out of the backfield and be utilized in that manner. But Bijan Robinson is on a completely different plane than any of these other running backs. I've heard people say that he is the best running back prospect to come out since Adrian Peterson. And wow. I think that's probably accurate. I think he's a better running back prospect than Saquon Barkley.
Interesting. I don't think I agree with that. No, I think Barkley was a better prospect.
See, I'm not really 100% certain, Max. I think Bijan Robinson has a better feel for running inside.
Way better feel for the actual position.
And maybe Saquon is a slightly better athlete. I think you could say that. I think that's fair. Saquon Barkley's 225 pounds. Bijan Robinson ended up coming in to the combine 5'10", 215 pounds, so slightly under what Saquon Barkley was in terms of size. But when you watch Bijan Robinson operate in a maze of defenders, he has this unique ability to make them all miss and make them look stupid. He had, I think, 104 missed tackles this year. And I went back and I looked through Pro Football Focus's database. There's never been a running back that has had that many missed tackles since they started charting missed tackles.
Yeah,
right? There's never been a running back with 100. I think the most was 99, and that was David Montgomery.
But when he was 39% forced missed tackle rate, which was also the best they've ever charted.
It's incredible. Like Bijan Robinson, he should be a top 5 pick. He's not going to be because he's a running back, and I completely understand. I'm just talking about who's the best players in the draft. I'm not meaning that, a team should spend a top 5 pick. Not a lot of teams in modern NFL history make that mistake, Dan. But I really loved Bijan Robinson's tape, and I thought he was a joy to watch. I think he's going to be a true difference maker who will probably be drafted somewhere late in round 1, but different running back than Charbonnet and Gibbs.
For sure. And I can't wait till you watch more Charbonnet, because I think you're going to see a lot of that phone booth make you miss with Charbonnet too, and that ability to just make juke and just get everybody off his scent. But he is different in the sense that he's a better level of that. And more importantly, I think for Bijan, he just has more breakaway speed than Robinson. He actually has that trump card to him. As far as Bijan Robinson versus Barkley as a prospect, I want to make it clear. I would always much, much rather prefer Bijan Robinson than Saquon Barkley for what I'm looking for. I'm looking for more of the things that like Robinson does well, the processing, the understanding, the cutback lanes, all of that. But as far as what Barkley was as a prospect coming out, it's not what he is anymore. To me, he's not the same player at all that he was when he came out. And it's even evidenced by the breakaway runs on, the actual production, right? He had 9 breakaway runs of 40-plus yards as a rookie, had 1 last season, I believe, or 2 maybe. The Titans and 1 more than that. So he's not the same player breakaway speed-wise, but when he came out of Penn State, that USC Penn State Rose Bowl game, that 1 touchdown run he had with like 80 yards, it was literally the most impressive athletic run I've seen by any prospect at the running back position in the history of the NFL. He was at that point basically a 230-pound Barry Sanders at that point against USC in that game in that entire season. He's not anymore. There's a lot more wear and tear on his tires. He's 5 years older. He's had ACL, MCL. He's played a lot in the NFL, taken a lot of hits. But at the time, he was just such a different level athlete. But again, I agree with you. I'd rather have Robinson. Moving on to Jahmyr Gibbs, I didn't mean to knock him earlier. Just because Charbonnet's my RB2 and I would never take a 199-pound back over a 215-pound guy, because I think the 215-pound guy can get every day back, and I don't. Every down back, I'm not so sure Gibbs can be. Gibbs is on his own right, had a good combine, right? 1.52 10-yard split, which was better than the 2 guys we just mentioned, Bijan Robinson and Charbonnet. Shows the quickness, shows the acceleration, which we knew he had. It's his trump card. But also the 20-yard split was 2.54, just as dominant. And the 4.36 40-yard dash. So he really does have the trump card. He's bringing that in, right? It's the quick acceleration, the stop, the ability to get to 60 miles per hour, 0 to 60 fast, and then also that home run hitting speed. But things I don't love about Jahmyr Gibbs' profile, 199-pound back. Seems to me more like a rich man's James Cook almost. 5'9", vertical jump, 33.5 inches. That scared me a little bit. Is the explosiveness there? Is this that same kind of player? Because, 37-inch vert for Bijan Robinson at 215 pounds and 37-inch vert for Zach Charbonnet at 214 pounds. That's a different number than a 199-pounder, with 33.5 vert. So there are parts of his profile. He does have the trump card, and Charbonnet doesn't have that, by the way. He has a trump card that a lot of these backs don't have, that speed and acceleration. But for me, it's more of a luxury type pick.
I'm so glad that you're a Zach Charbonnet fan, because I've been waiting to get to his tape, and I've been saying, I'm going to watch Zach Charbonnet today, and then someone else always comes out. But I think I'm going to like him too, just from the highlights that I've seen from him at his size. I do feel like he has this ability to reach top speed. Maybe not quickly, but once he gets there, it's pretty unique. I felt like it's faster than a 4.54, like his top speed on tape.
I like that, but what I like most, and I don't want to spoil too much because we're going to do his profile, but I want to put these ideas in your head because while you're watching, you might see it. What I like most is his creativity in between the tackles, as far as like maximizing every yard on every single, and when he's in space and he's running toward the sideline, Nick, just keep an eye on how many times while he's over at the sideline, he actually goes down. The play actually ends with him on the ground. There are so many plays in his tape where he's not on the ground by the end of his run. What does that say to you? His contact balance is filthy. It's absolutely filthy. And then the last thing, keep an eye on, his natural hands as a catcher, because in a Chip Kelly offense, you need to be able to catch the football. They run a ton of screens to him, a ton of quick throws to him, and there are a ton of throws that were behind him. There was one catch he made, I believe, in the Stanford film, but it might have been Arizona. I'm getting the tapes mixed together, where it was a throw that he had to totally flip his body behind him, and he just plucks it with his hands. He's a hands catcher completely. So it's the receiving profile that also has me really excited about him.
Yeah, he had 320 receiving yards on 37 catches this last year. He's also a Michigan transfer. So he started at Michigan, transferred to UCLA, and I like what I've seen from him, but I'll reserve my judgment until I see an entire evaluation and a bunch of film on him. But I do think I'm going to appreciate his tape.
Let's talk about another back who's talked about sometimes in the top 5, but I think after his combine might ultimately fall to round 3 or round 4. Another player who I haven't seen enough of yet, but I know I'm going to like based on the little I've seen, and that's Tank Bigsby out of Auburn. His combine was not quite like Charbonnet's, who some people, compare him to. 5'11", 210 pounds, fine there. 21 bench reps, not terrible. 4.56 40-yard dash is not great from a breakaway speed standpoint. I kind of knew that's what he was going to be, but it isn't great. The 20-yard split also, 2.66, not very good, but a good 10-yard split. But then the vertical jump, 32.5 inches, not good explosive number. And then a 9-foot, 11-inch broad jump, again, more average than anything else. These are all pretty average to good numbers, but in a class where you have 3 guys we just talked about with elite type testing and elite type athleticism, this is definitely more of a little bit of a knock on Bigsby. But I haven't watched his tape yet, and I already know, based on the little I've seen, he's going to be my kind of back.
Yeah, I have to reserve my judgment as well on Tank Bigsby just because I haven't seen the tape. I've heard people that I respect talk him up as a hard-nosed runner, so that's one check mark, I guess, in his favor, but we'll have to wait and see exactly how he plays once we get around to Auburn's tape.
And so that was Auburn running back Tank Bigsby. Now let's talk about a couple more sleeper type running backs who had interesting combines. One had a phenomenal combine athletically. The other I thought had a really good one considering his film is also great. These are guys who, look, we're going to get to the Tajee Spearses too. This is not going to be one of them. We're going to get to those like smaller backs, Deuce Vaughn and Tajee Spears I want to talk about. But these are guys who I think have a chance to be potentially in more of a 3-down role or at least like a 2+ role. And that's Chase Brown out of Illinois and Rashawn Johnson out of Texas. I want to start with Chase Brown out of Illinois, who absolutely knocked this combine out of the park and proved to be one of the better athletes in this class at the running back position. He had a 9.76 overall RAS score, one of the best at the position, 25 bench press reps, which was insane. That puts him in elite percentile there at 209 pounds. He's obviously a strong back. 4.43 40-yard dash at 209 is great size speed combination. 2.6 10-yard split, 20-yard split, very good. 1.53 10-yard split, elite percentile. 40-inch vertical jump, elite. 10-foot 7-inch broad jump, elite. So elite in explosive numbers, elite in the acceleration and the quickness, elite in the deep speed, 209 pounds with 25 bench press reps, which is also in the elite profile. What do you make of that?
I love that 40-inch vertical jump. And he's another player that I haven't watched Illinois' offense yet, but Chase Brown, I saw him down at the Senior Bowl when I was just reviewing the Senior Bowl tape, and he was the one player that I brought up on the previous podcast, how he stole the freaking soul of Riley Moss, who attempted to just fill the alley. A lot of people talking about how Riley Moss, the cornerback from Iowa, should play safety. Well, that narrative evaporated very quickly, Dan, when he tried to fill the alley against Chase Brown. And Chase Brown loaded the ground, great center of gravity, just freaking ran right through Riley Moss. And I was like, oh, the poor Hawkeye, the poor guy. I'm excited to get to his tape and the next guy we're going to talk about. I've watched Bijan Robinson's tape, but I didn't see enough of Rashawn Johnson yet.
Yeah, one more thing on Brown. I get Austin Eckler vibes from Chase Brown. Let's see how that plays out, but that's the vibes I get. Low built to the ground type running back that packs a punch at about 210, but can really rip off, really strong upper body. And one thing that Austin Eckler had was those really good explosive jumps.
Austin Eckler looks like somebody chiseled him, like at a marble. Just like an amazing physique.
Yeah, LeBron's he really is. And he made in the NFL with such a low center of gravity. I kind of like those low center of gravity type backs. Rashawn Johnson, not exactly the same. He's almost 6'1", 219 pounds. 4.58 40 at 219 is pretty solid. Nothing amazing, but pretty solid. Okay to pretty good on the 20-yard and the 10-yard splits. 31.5-inch vertical, not great, but a good broad jump. I always find it weird when these athletes have great broad jumps and then and then bad vertical jumps. Like, I don't understand how that's a thing, but it happened here.
They're better jumping, on the horizontal plane than the vertical plane,
I guess. I don't really know what it comes down to, but yeah, like you said, haven't seen a lot of Roschon tape, but we have a strong feeling he's going to be a big sleeper for Nick and I. Let's talk
a lot of tread left on the tire too, because he was backing up Bijan Robinson. Like Roschon Johnson was somebody who was at Texas before Bijan Robinson, and he was set to be the guy. Bijan ends up coming onto campus, and he doesn't transfer out. He ends up, still having a role on that offense. So I'm sure Nolan Smith would appreciate that after Nolan Smith went on about how he's kind of looks down upon the transfer portal.
All right, now I want to talk about Taji Spears and Deuce Vaughn, two backs who probably won't be your every down Saquon Barkley 75% snap share type backs. But man, when you take these guys on day 3, which I probably think they'll go, maybe they'll go day 2 though, round 3 potentially, you're getting so much juice to your offense. You're adding such a trump card to your offense. So I would be good with either of these two players if the Giants wanted to take either of them. Now, one thing I want to say about Deuce Vaughn, not the greatest testing numbers. He was 5'5", 179 pounds. That puts him in like crazy low percentiles from a height and weight standpoint. Bench press obviously is not going to be great either. 17 reps, 35.5-inch vertical. I didn't love, and just the 9'8" broad jump also not great. Didn't run the 40. Didn't do the acceleration or the agility testing, but when you watched him in the drills, man, how good did Deuce Vaughn look changing direction in those drills and transitioning and moving with his feet? It was wild. Like, I watched him and I was just like, I'm thinking of this at the NFL level. I'm watching him weave in and out in my head behind blockers, in between linebackers, and away from safeties. I'm just thinking about how it translates.
Oh man, he's such a controlled back, and he's so low to the ground. That's the kind of guy who's going to just get lost right behind offensive linemen. I mean, remember the run against Alabama that he had? He had that 88-yard touchdown run in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama, and that was one of those ones where it was just like an A-gap run, because everyone looks at a Deuce Vaughn type. He's 5'5". He's a small ass guy, dude. Right? He's 5'5" out there, but Kansas State used him in the A gap. They used him in the B gap. He was an interior rusher. This isn't just hey, we're only going to use him as a receiver. Now, he might be that in the NFL, because it's going to be difficult for a 179-pound guy. Like, is he Donnell Pumphrey from San Diego State, who the Eagles drafted a few years ago? Or is he Darren Sproles, who also went to Kansas State? So there's a lot of comparisons, and I think he's a little bit more like a Darren Sproles type of player. I don't know if he'll just fizzle out of the league. It also depends on where he lands, but I'm definitely interested in Deuce Vaughn. And hey, man, got to represent those short guys, man. A 5'5" dude who's able to have a 90-yard touchdown against Alabama, that says something.
To be fair, I did like Pumphrey a lot too. So and I think most people during that draft process felt like he'd be a sleeper. How about Taji Spears out of Tulane? He didn't have the greatest combine either for what they were expecting. 5'9", 201, not bad there. 201, 5'9". I like the low center of gravity guys. 18 bench press reps, 39-inch vertical was great. So I shouldn't say he had a bad combine. I actually take that back. He didn't do any of the testing, but the actual tests he did, he showed off his explosiveness. Elite scores for vertical jump, 39 inches, broad jump, 10 feet, 5 inches, elite. Didn't do the 40, didn't do the acceleration drills and the quickness drills, didn't do the agility drills. So I think when you watch his tape, you can see this dude can change directions fast. This dude can go from 0 to 60 fast. So I don't know if I really need those testing. Maybe the 40 would have told me something.
Oh, dude, he's like shot out of a cannon, to use the cliche. I mean, Taji Spears, we talk a lot on this podcast about steady drum beats. He's had probably the loudest steady drum beat that keeps getting louder throughout this process, because he went down to the Senior Bowl and really made an impression in front of all of the NFL evaluators. And now he had that combine where he was able to have those explosive testing numbers. He didn't run the 40. I'm wondering what he would have ran, because he's a pretty damn fast back. And I think he's somebody who will probably be selected. I'm thinking, man, on day 2, he could be one of those day 2 backs, somebody who slips in, around in the 50s, in the 60s, something like that, and will come into the NFL and have an impact. I'm not sure if he'll be like on every down. I don't think he's an every down type of guy. He's a little bit smaller, but he'll definitely be a part of a nice running back by committee.
And then a couple guys just to touch on. We're going to bring a trump card to this whole mix of this NFL draft. Keaton Mitchell out of East Carolina ran a 4.37. And also with elite testing numbers on the 20-yard split, 10-yard split, vertical jump, broad jump. Just an absolute elite athlete with elite speed. When you can put that on an NFL field, you now, like, for example, let's say it's the Giants, right? Say they tag Barkley, come to a long-term deal, let Slayton walk. Well, if you put this guy Keaton Mitchell on the Giants next year, he'd be one of their only sub 4.4 athletes on the field, to be completely honest. Like true sub 4.4. Like, Wandell ran like a 4.4-ish. That's not a true sub 4.4, right? Like the actual 4.4 guys, Breida, probably close, but probably a little bit over. This is a 4.37 true breakaway speed kind of guy. Same thing with Arcane, the running back. So we're talking about guys that if the Giants
called him Arcane again.
Or yeah, Acane. We're talking about guys that if the Giants want.
Still wrong.
Acane, what is it?
A-Chain.
A-Chain, whatever. It's a terrible pronunciation of her name. Just kidding. It's fine. But we're talking about guys who could immediately add speed to the field for the Giants and be a trump card from a speed standpoint.
A-Chain is interesting in that aspect, man. You get him into space, he can just go. And that was evident all throughout his film in Texas A&M. I didn't think his bag drills were as smooth as some of the other backs. Like watching Bijan Robinson, that's the perfect guy to watch if you want to watch how somebody is supposed to run all of those bag drills. It was flawless. It was so freaking smooth, so right? And then you can kind of base all those other running backs off that. I felt like, again, you brought up Deuce Vaughn. I felt like he looked really good in those drills as well. But yeah, A-Chain, he's definitely get the football in his hands and just allow him to go. And if you have a creative offensive mind, Mike Kafka, Brian Dable, they can really leverage his skill set.
Let's talk some receivers. I want to start with a receiver who solidified himself as my wide receiver one for this class, the receiver I'd be most willing to make a bet on. It's not a traditional class where I have an obvious wide receiver one like Jamar Chase and past classes, but just the guy I'm most willing to make a bet on. And it's especially true because I don't care what position he plays. I consider all three wide receiver positions starting positions in today's NFL, and that's Jackson Smith and Jigba, who posted such elite change of direction numbers, right? They're talking about a 3.93 short shuttle, which is insane to go sub 4 on that, and a 6.57 3 cone that they said his numbers were so elite they compared to what was it, Wes Welker or Edelman? I forgot which one of those Patriots wide receivers. I think it was Welker, and he actually beat them, and they were legendary change of direction numbers that led to a 9.41 overall RAS score, despite having not great numbers, height, weight, vertical jump wasn't anything special, 35. Broad jump was really good though. At 10 foot 5 inches. Hand size not great, 9 there. Arm length 30.5 inches there. So nothing too amazing.
He's a slot receiver.
But yeah, exactly. It is what he is, right? Exactly. You draft him to be next Cooper Kupp type player in the NFL. And man, those change of direction numbers were insane.
They were the best change of direction numbers since 2014 when Brendan Cooks ran the 3 cone, specifically 3 cone, I believe. And when you look at the slot, what do you need to possess? You need to possess the ability to make people miss. And there could be a lot of people around you that you have to make miss because you're in the middle of the field. He has that athletic ability. And he didn't run the 40. I don't even think he needs to run the 40 at this point. With those type of agility drills, teams who need slot receivers, basically every team in the NFL runs a lot of 11 personnel. They need slot receivers, and Jackson Smith and Jigba fits that perfectly. And remember, this is a guy, he didn't play in 2022, really. He had a couple catches. I think he had 4 catches for 39 yards, was dealing with a hamstring injury. 2021, though, he went off at Ohio State, 95 catches for 1,595 yards, 9 touchdowns, and he was the alpha dog on a team with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Okay, so that's the kind of player that we're talking about here. And he's going to end up going to a place like New England or somewhere and just being an absolute stud for them.
Yeah, to me, that's really what it comes down to. If you could dominate target share and production in a wide receiver core that has the rookie of the year, Garrett Wilson, and another wide receiver in Chris Olave, it could have been the rookie of the year in any other year. It shows me a lot, and it may be all I really, really need to know.
And think about how offenses are run now. It's like, yeah, well, not a lot of offenses, Dan, use like the X receiver who's going to be outside all the time. Like the Giants aren't like that either. That's why I think Jackson Smith and Jigba, if he's around at pick 25, could realistically be in serious consideration for the Giants. Like, yeah, they just drafted Wandell Robinson. It's like, dude, the Giants will alternate who is inside, who is outside. It's very fluid. And I think
they're going to run bunch and stacks and all sorts of stuff that negates the worry of having the traditional 1-1-3. If it was Ben McAdoo offense, we obviously don't want multiple slots because what are you going to do? It's always the same look with the outside receivers and the one guy in the slot, but that's just not how it's going to be for Dable and Kafka.
It's not how it's going to be. And that really negates one of the biggest drawbacks to Jackson Smith and Jigba is the fact that he is a slot only guy. In a Kafka and Dable type of offense, that's not that big of a deal.
Yep. Completely agree with you on that. Let's talk about another player who I have. Look, if it's JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba as the receiver, I'm most likely to, in Jigba as the receiver, I'm most likely to draft with the first first receiver pick if I was needing a receiver. The other guy for me would be Zay Flowers. He'd be the guy I'm second most likely. And I don't want to knock Quentin Johnston because I do see a ton of upside with Johnson, and he is by far and away the best upside pick of any of these three. If he hits his ceiling, it's so much better than the ceiling of a Flowers or a JSN. But I just don't know if I feel that comfortable about him reaching that ceiling versus these other guys like Flowers and JSN, who I think are very close to reaching what their ceiling could be. Zay Flowers, not the greatest combine from a relative athletic score standpoint, mostly though because he didn't do well from a height and weight standpoint. At 5'9", 182, it's not an ideal wide receiver height. It's not an ideal wide receiver weight. He also has the dreaded sub 30-inch arms at 29 and 2.25 inches there. Hand size 9.25, not amazing, but 4.42 40-yard dash. So he has the vertical speed, and it shows up on his tape when he runs those double moves. He creates so much vertical reputation. 20-yard split, great, 2.58. 10-yard split, elite, 1.53. Vertical jump, just in the good range at 35.5, but then an elite broad jump at 10 foot 7 inches. What'd you see from Zay Flowers?
Zay Flowers, just some of the catches that he made on the field in Indianapolis. I think he had one on the sidelines that was like really, really impressive, which you're running routes on air. It's not that difficult. I get that, but you get to see the body control up front, and all that stuff was evident on his film as well. But the gauntlet, dude, and I like the gauntlet drill because it shows how a player can maintain one straight line and how he can catch the ball, divert his attention to the other side, recollect his focus, and then catch the ball. Shows concentration. And I felt like Zay Flowers and the UNC slot wide receiver, Josh Downs, were very smooth in that specific drill, the gauntlet, which is one of my favorite at the combine.
Yeah, without a doubt. Let's talk about Quentin Johnston, a player we already did a draft profile on, the only one we have so far. Our first guy viewed by many as the wide receiver one in this class, the highest upside prospect for sure in my mind. He's 6'3". Some people thought he might be 6'4". He's 6'3", 208. Arm length is good, 33.625. Hand size solid, 9.625. Didn't do any of the speed drills, the 40-yard dash, the splits. So we don't have acceleration quickness numbers. We don't have deep speed numbers, and that's disappointing, by the way. I wanted to see what his 40 would be. But we do have the explosive numbers, and a 40.5-inch vertical is amazing at 6'3". And 11 feet, 2-inch broad jump is even more elite. So elite explosion numbers out of Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, Quentin Johnston's an absolute beast. I'm not surprised by those explosive numbers, but there's not too much more we can discuss about him at the combine. So move on.
Let's talk Jalin Hyatt, a player who we think. So Jalin Hyatt's a weird one for me because I know I want to go positionless, but I also feel like if he needs to reach a ceiling, it needs to be at the playing some outside receiver. So I'm curious if he'll be a slot only guy at the NFL and if that changes anything. He was 87.3% in the slot. Yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot of red flags with Jalin Hyatt. Like, I like Jalin Hyatt, but I think I can get a speedy wide receiver who can take the top off the defense a little bit later on. And there's a bunch of people like Palmer, the kid from Nebraska, the kids from Cincinnati who ran fast.
Yeah.
Like Jalin Hyatt ran a 4.4. Like, that's solid. And I think he plays faster than that. I think it's fair to say that. And I think, when he's tracking the football, he has long strides too, because he's a little bit high hipped. When he's tracking the football, like, he doesn't really break speed. Like, he can keep pace with that football if it's overthrown. It's something that I really appreciated about his tape. But when you only have 1 year of production, you operated predominantly in the slot. You were in a very, very, I would say, progressive system. Like, Josh Heupel does great work for the University of Tennessee, and Hendon Hooker was a really good quarterback prospect.
Progressive, but maybe not all that translatable to the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think, again, Jalin Hyatt is a slot receiver that align like 2 yards outside the numbers, just because they do some crazy stuff down there in Josh Heupel's offense. I don't want to make it like I don't love Jalin Hyatt, but there's still, I you don't see that many contested catches. I don't want to call him a one-trick pony, but his major trick is speed, and that is the majority of the reason why you would be drafting him. And I just think you can get that a little bit later on in the draft. I think I'd rather have some of these other guys that we're going over.
And I can't knock you for that. But with all that said, he did test out elite from an athleticism standpoint. 9.46 overall relative athletic score. 4.4 flat puts him in the elite range. 20-yard split of 2.56 puts him in the elite range. 10-yard split of 1.5 flat puts him in the elite range. Vertical jump 40 inches puts him in the elite range. Broad jump 11 feet 3 inches, also elite range. So elite explosiveness with the jumps, elite speed with the 4.4 flat, and then elite quickness. All the traits are there athletically, but like you said, as far as production goes, he is a bit of a one-trick pony. That scares me as well, especially in addition to the 1 year production.
I'll say this, though. I loved how he tracked the football, not just maintaining the speed and all that, but I feel like he had really good concentration into his hands. But this is kind of crazy. Just according to Pro Football Focus, through his 3 years in college, he only saw 13 contested catches. He caught 6 of them, which is, that's okay. That's fine. But only 13. That's kind of crazy.
It's a super low number and obviously, requires a ton of prognostication and projection as far as the next level. Let's talk about a couple other receivers. I want to talk about a receiver who is probably ranked a bit higher than Hyatt right now, but to me in the same range. This is a guy who I haven't seen his film yet, really, outside of what I just watched in the regular season, because I bet on his team and his quarterback on a week-to-week basis, because that's what I do in college football. I just bet on 2 quarterbacks all year last year, and for the most part, they didn't leave me down. I mostly bet the team overs. That's USC and UNC, my 2 favorite quarterbacks in next year's class, guys that I would love to have on any team that I'm a fan of. And that's wide receiver Jordan Addison, who played for USC with Caleb Williams this year. Addison, I haven't seen too much tape, but people love it. People think he's amazing. But combine-wise, athletically, it was a disaster weekend for the dude. I mean, we're talking about arm length 30, just over 30 inches, not great. Hand size, not great. Weight 171, not really good at all. A 4.49 40-yard dash at 171 is not what you want to see there. The 20-yard split and the 10-yard split were okay at 156 and 26 respectively. Vertical jump, not great though at 34 inches, and the broad jump only a little bit better at 10 feet 2 inches. So not the testing people were hoping for him.
No, I think the highlight for him would be that dig route that he ran in one of the on-field drills where the throw was well in front of him and he just leaped and he snagged it out of the air, looked very fluid, was able to recollect his balance and just pitter patter, just kept running, bro. So not the best testing. I still think he has a lot of upside and I'm excited to get to his
film. Yeah, I think that could make him a super value and potentially like slide him right into 25 with the Giants. I'm not really huge on weighing this testing too much, but just want to bring it up. Another player who's ranked a little bit lower than him, 2 players in a similar range to me of this draft are Marvin Mims Jr. out of Oklahoma and Josh Downs out of UNC, who played with Drake May, my boy. But let's start with Marvin Mims Jr. out of Oklahoma, a player who I really like. I've seen a little bit of him. I tweeted about him a few weeks ago. I think he could be an absolute steal. We talked about Jalen Hyatt, right? Well, 2 things Jalen Hyatt does great is he's an explosive athlete with crazy quickness, explosiveness, and speed, and he tracks the ball well on the deep balls, like you discussed. I feel like you can just get Marvin Mims like 30 to 40 picks later, and you're just getting much better value on a very similar style prospect. 5'10", 183, 4.38 40-yard dash, elite. 2.55 20-yard split, elite. 1.55 10-yard, close to elite. Vertical 39.5, elite. Broad jump 10 feet 9 inches, elite. 3-cone was only pretty good, and he did test the 3-cone, but that's what he is. He's not the quick change direction guy. He's the explosive, fast, quick, speedy guy. So I love what I saw from him on tape as far as tracking deep balls. And I've only watched a very little bit of him so far. He's one of the receivers I got onto last week. But again, like I said, I almost feel like you can get him 30 picks later than Hyatt, and you're getting better value most likely.
Yeah, this is somebody who averaged 19.5 yards per catch in his entire college career. That's not just 1 year. And that only happened because in 2020, he averaged 16.5. Oh, terrible. But the other 2 years, it was 22 and 20 respectively in 2021 and 2022. So this is a true deep threat, somebody who can threaten the defense vertically. And I think you're right, man. If you want to take Jalen Hyatt in the first round, good on you. But there's these deep threats that you can get a little bit later on that might be at a better value. And then you can go and fill another need that many needs that the Giants have with pick 25.
Then we got Josh Downs, a player who worked with Drake May at North Carolina. I think we're going to ultimately end up liking him more than where people are suggesting he goes. He's somewhat similar in build to the guys we were talking about, just 5'9", 171 with good testing numbers, 4.48 40-yard dash, pretty damn good, 2.6 20-yard split, 1.49 10-yard split. Those are like elite of elite numbers there. 38.5-inch vertical, right in that elite range, 10 foot, 11 inch, almost an 11-foot broad jump. So elite explosiveness, elite quickness and acceleration, and elite deep speed. But I also feel like he's a pretty damn good route runner and has really good body control in what I remember of watching from him. And you even put this, but despite being small, he had a 72.2% contested catch rate, which is really freaking good for a player of his size. I think Josh Downs could ultimately be one of the big sleepers in this class at the wide receiver position.
I agree with you. He's just more than likely going to be a slot. But as we said a little bit before, that isn't the biggest deal for the New York Giants, in at least my opinion. He's somebody who had over 1,000 yards this year with 11 catches, 11 touchdowns, 94 catches. I liked how he looked on the field, though, dude. The gauntlet drill is one of the smoothest of this year. So he's definitely somebody who's on my radar.
Might be somebody I would take over a Hyatt type too, especially you get him in, again, 30, 40 picks later than that type of player. Let's talk about the guy who I call the Donovan Peoples-Jones Award of this year's combine, the athletic beast profile that had bad production to bad production at college, but a lot of that can be blamed on bad quarterback play and bad system for him, for a receiver. And that's Bryce Ford Wheaton out of West Virginia. Bryce Ford Wheaton absolutely tore up this combine with an almost perfect RAS score. He's 6'4", which puts him in elite score there. 221, elite size right there. 6'4", 221 is elite X receiver size. 4.38 40-yard dash at that size. 2.55 20-yard split. 1.54 10-yard split. We're through 6 elite numbers right now. 41-inch vert, elite. 10-foot 9-inch broad, elite. Then the crazy part of this whole thing, the elite 813 shuttle time by this dude, and that's borderline elite. It's more in the great
4.15 shuttle
4.15. Sorry, yeah. Yep. 4.15 shuttle, 8.13 would have been terrible, but 4.15 shuttle, that was the surprising one there. So now we're looking at an insanely elite athlete, and you did a good job of putting this up there on our notes document. He actually tests almost identical from an athleticism standpoint. I mean, like T for T, every single one of these drills, and height and weight, though he's actually bigger than this prospect, to Christian Watson from last year. Now, I haven't watched any Bryce Ford Wheaton. I watched a lot of Christian Watson. I planted my flag on Watson. I put him in my top 5 overall receiver last year. I wanted him. I got him in every fantasy league. I drafted him in my keeper league. This was my guy. This is the type of guy I bet on. Those are the traits I bet on. I haven't watched any Bryce Ford Wheaton. Have you? Because if that's the case, is he going to look as good as Christian Watson looked in North Dakota, or are they just the same athletes and unfortunately different actual football players?
I haven't gotten to West Virginia's tape yet, but I know JT Daniels was his quarterback this past year, and JT Daniels was this highly regarded quarterback that went to USC and Georgia, and then he transferred to the Mountaineers, played there in 2022, and then he now has transferred to Rice. So 4 colleges in I think 4 or 5 years. It says something about what's going on there. So I don't think Bryce Ford Wheaton was probably in the best situation, but I'll let you know in a couple of weeks once I get to his film, and he's definitely on my radar after that performance at the Combine.
How about 2 other players that got some buzz during Senior Bowl that we're going to circle back to now in Rashee Rice and Tank Dell? Let's start with Tank Dell, who was like the star of the Senior Bowl, not the star of the Combine. 5'8", 165. These are really, really, really bad size numbers for a receiver. But we knew that coming in. 4.49 40-yard dash, I felt like was pretty disappointing for a Tank Dell. I think if you don't have deep speed with that profile, it's tougher to make it. 2.6 20-yard split was okay. The 1.49 10-yard split was elite. Didn't really do any of the other testing. Didn't do the shuttle, the 3-cone, the vert. Had an okay broad jump. No bench press. So what did you see from Dell and maybe the drills or anything there?
Nah, it just sucks, man. Because I really like Tank Dell's game, but a 4.49 it's just not good. There's really nothing else that you could say for that profile for a 165-pound wide receiver who was 5'8". You can't run a 4.49. But I'll say this: he had a 1.49 10-yard split, which is pretty damn good, right? That's pretty solid. He didn't do the vertical jump, and he didn't do the 3-cone and the 20-yard shuttle, the short shuttle. I think
which I'm surprised by because he could have dominated those.
Exactly. Like my big. The big reason why I like Tank Dell so much is because he can change direction on a dime. It's one of the quickest change of directions I've seen since Kadarius Toney. It's that good on his tape in Houston. And I think there is going to be a team that will take him more than likely on day 2. Maybe he'll slip to day 3, but I'm not sure. I mean, he could because he's such an outlier. But I do believe he was wildly productive at Houston. They play in a big spread type of system. But I just think you can leverage his skill sets enough, similar to how you can do with Kadarius Toney. But the difference is he's a totally different individual than Kadarius Toney. So that could lead to a whole nother upside that we haven't necessarily seen Kadarius Toney scratch quite yet. So, but this is not a good sign for him. 4.49 is not great.
Not for a 165-pound athlete for sure. Rashee Rice, though, on the other hand, 9.67 overall relative athletic score, really good. 6'1", 204, 4.51 at 205 is pretty good. 10-yard split, elite 1.49. That's the same number Tank Dell ran. So that's really interesting as far as an acceleration quickness goes. Explosive 41-inch vertical, explosive 10-foot, 8-inch broad jump, also elite numbers. So we're looking at a much better athlete than I think people realize with Rashee Rice.
Yeah, and he was somebody that I didn't believe had the best Senior Bowl just from some of the tape I saw down there. I was like, oh, man, I've heard a lot about Rashee Rice, but he's not really grabbing me. And he came down to the Combine and had a good one, so I'm happy for him.
Anything on Charlie Jones out of Purdue, a player who a lot of people like. I haven't really seen much of him yet, but he had a pretty good combine. 4.43. I don't think anyone was expecting him to be a 4.43 type athlete. Pretty good numbers in the explosive jumps as well, and even the 10-yard split.
I really like Charlie Jones. I like this tape too. I watched Purdue's offense. Like I said, he went up against Joey Porter Jr. and he got the best of Joey Porter Jr. a couple different times in week 1 when he was targeted like 14 times, Joey Porter Jr. that is. So that really kind of turned me on to Charlie Jones. I brought him up a couple podcasts ago. This is somebody who was at Buffalo, then transferred to Iowa, elite special teamer, has punt return and kick return touchdowns in his background. And I really think he's somebody who you might be able to get early on day 3 who can come in and he can compete for snaps, like a better David Sills, only a little bit smaller, but like that type of player with more juice, right? So like somebody who you might be bringing in for special teams reasons, but he can work his way into the lineup because he has that type of talent. He's been counted out several different times and he keeps producing. He transferred to Purdue to be more involved in a pass heavy attack. And it really paid off for Charlie Jones because he was wildly productive this past year. He ran a 4.43, like you said, 36.5 vert, 10.4 broad jump. I just think he's a pretty solid overall player and he'd be a value pick somewhere in day 3.
I like that. And I think the Giants could potentially be very interested in a player like him who I think fits what they want in their profile, especially if that value is there. Say he does drop to round 3. Okay, Nick, let's transition positions.
I have one more wide receiver to bring up. And I think we'd be remiss if we did not bring him up because he's from at least a Jersey college and I believe he's Hawaiian, and that is Andre Yoshovis from Princeton. And he's a really good athlete with great size, 6'3", 205 pounds, 32-inch arms, ran a 4.43, 152, 10-yard split, 39-inch vert, 10.8 broad, and then sub 7.3 cone, 6.85 with a 4.12 short shuttle. And I think he's another one of those players, and I'll be more interested in him probably than Charlie Jones, depending on what you want to do, because I feel like Yoshovis has a ton of upside, right? That might be untapped at this point because he had a pretty good Senior Bowl week. He's an excellent athlete coming from a small program, definitely more of a developmental type of player. But if he reaches his potential, you're talking about a player who could be a steal and a deep threat. One thing I didn't love about him, though, he has really small hands, which sucks, man. He has like 8 3/4 inch hands, which isn't as bad, I don't think, as Will Fuller, but it's pretty freaking small. It's not Hunter Renfrow hands. Hunter Renfrow legit has those little hands, that you stick on like your pinky and you like do this with your finger. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
You see it in gifts everywhere. That's Hunter Renfrow's hands, and the guy still doesn't drop a football. I can't really explain it.
That is true. He never really drops balls. But little insight into the player Nick just mentioned. He was a player who the Giants showed interest in a lot during the Senior Bowl, and the Giants have been connected to a lot. So someone to keep an eye on. We have a mutual friend on the Princeton staff, and he spoke wonders about. He thinks this kid is really dedicated, loves his work ethic, and thinks he's going to be a win at the next level. So just keep that in mind before we move on to my favorite class by far in this NFL draft. It's the tight end class. Before you stop me and talk about all these first round busts, the tight end position throughout NFL history, like I care about them, I don't. This is a historic tight end class. And when you take a tight end, you have to understand the bust factor is higher. But the hit factor, when you nail one of these tight ends, you are drafting a unicorn, especially if they can block. But if they are either way, a Y-sized tight end, you are drafting a unicorn. Tight end is disgustingly bad across the NFL. I'm so happy the Giants found Daniel Bellinger, but I want another. I want 2 great tight ends at all times. It gives you such an edge. Some teams have 0. Some teams aren't even close to having 1. So let's talk about this ridiculously, almost in my mind, historic tight end class. It really does feel that way, at least from an athletic testing standpoint. I haven't gotten to all the tape. I want to start with the guy who absolutely stole the show. He won't be the tight end 1 on many boards, though I do think he should be potentially the first tight end drafted if you're focusing on projection and betting on traits. And that's Darnell Washington out of Georgia, a player with very little actual production at the collegiate level because he did play with Brock Bowers at tight end at Georgia, a tight end who was in his same tight end room, had to share snaps with him, and a better player. He's going to be a top 10 pick for sure. Plus, in an offense that likes to run the ball a good amount, and an offense that can throw the ball downfield with Stetson Bennett off play action. He wasn't really a focal point of the system and the scheme. That doesn't mean he can't be at the NFL level, because from a testing standpoint, here's what you get with him. 6'6.5", almost a true 6'7" at 264. Those are elite frame numbers. And what did he do with it? A 4.64 40-yard dash. Are you kidding me? A 4.64 at 264 with a 2.68 20-yard split and a 1.61 10-yard split. Are you kidding me? We're talking about elite size, speed, quickness, acceleration. Broad jump was elite, 10 foot 2 inches, not a great vert jump. But then the trump of all trumps by far, Nick, for his profile from an athleticism standpoint, a 4.08 short shuttle drill. Unfathomable for a 264-pound athlete. It really freaking is, dude. It was better than all but 2 wide receivers at the combine. Are you kidding me? His change of direction. Some people think the short shuttle is like all you need from the combine. A lot of people I talk to are just like, don't even look at any of this crap. Just look at the short shuttle. It's basically all that matters for a lot of these positions. And he put
offensive line specifically.
And so now you have a guy who has an elite athletic profile from a change of direction standpoint, a size speed combination, 264, 464, a quickness standpoint with those splits, and great film as a blocker, as an inline blocker. Like, this is the craziest part about his whole profile, dude. If he just had all of that, Nick, and he was the receiving type, I'd be like, well, that's the type of guy you might want to gamble on at the back end of round 1, early round 2. But when you also factor in that he's already a really good blocker and has the frame to become an elite blocker at the NFL level, to me, that's somebody who can't make it out of the top 15 if I'm an NFL GM. I just don't gamble on a lot of these guys over someone like that. Like, I'm not going to take, personally, I'm not taking probably Jordan Addison over him. Like, I don't need a 5'10", 178-pound receiver when I could get a 6'6", 264-pound tight end who can block and probably has a shit ton of untapped potential as a receiver.
Yeah, Darnell Washington, you're not going to find me complaining about him, right? The one thing I guess you could say is there weren't that many designed play or all the plays that I feel like he had success with from the tape that I've seen of Georgia, which I just watched them a lot on Saturday. I'm about to dive into their offensive tape. I finished up their defensive tape recently, but there's not a lot of him like going over the middle of the field and making catches through progressions and stuff. It's a lot of just design type of plays because they're Georgia. They run the football a lot, right? There's a lot of just like kind of play action slides and things like that. He had targeted 43 times, had 28 catches for 454 yards with 2 touchdowns. I think he only, like the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season, he never eclipsed having 1 catch in the game. So he wasn't a primary part of his offense. That does not mean he can't be that at the next level. And that's very important. Okay. But that's just something that I feel like the detractors can say. I put up recently, Dan, I'm not sure if you saw it, a blocking montage of Darnell Washington, about 2.5 minutes of Darnell Washington just blocking. And it's pretty freaking impressive.
Watch that. Oh, and it's really cool. Impressive.
Because not only can he take a 5 technique who was 265 pounds and win that one-on-one battle, we talk about losing slow. He doesn't lose slow. He's like a 6th offensive lineman. I know a lot of people have said that, but it's kind of true. He's like almost like a 6th offensive lineman out there for you. And he has the athletic ability to go downfield. And he has the athletic ability to kick out into space and track down a cornerback and kick them out and just be an absolute beast in that manner too. So he's a weapon that I feel like a lot of teams, picking in the 20s should consider. I'm not certain if that's the best spot for the New York Giants to go is Darnell Washington, but if they are looking at tight end, he might be my number 1. I still have so much film to do on the tight end position, so I shouldn't make that declaration, but damn, am I intrigued.
And I don't even know if he'll be my number 1 because I freaking love Mayer, I love Kincaid, and I love Musgrave. But upside, and I love all 4 of these players. And as far as like, you get a big floor with him when you take a player like this because, like you said, he's already in a weapon as a blocker. You put him on that every snap role where you're putting a 6'7", almost 264-pound guy on the line of scrimmage to block. Like you said, he can block in space, he can block down, he can do everything. As he just adds so much to your arsenal as an offense, especially a team like this where we're re-signing Barkley and re-signing Jones. Like, we are going forward with a run heavy style of offense, and we know we use a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of misdirection and design to get the run game going. I just think he could be so good for this offense. But let's talk about another player at the combine at his position. That's Michael Mayer, who I think no matter how he tested, I was always going to like, because when I actually watch Notre Dame, and I've started to watch a little bit of film, I saw 1 game of Mayer so far. I just know this is going to work. It's one of those guys I watch, and I know it's going to work at the NFL level. I just know it. And 6'4", 249 is fine. 4.7 40-yard dash, pretty good. I mean, it's not 4.64, but it's damn close. 4.7 flat at 249. Elite 20-yard split, okay, to pretty good 10-yard split. Vertical and broad jumps weren't anything to write home about. Didn't do the change of direction testing. Any thoughts on Mayer?
I like everything I've seen from Mayer. I watched him after the 2021 season. He's the tight end that everyone would probably consensusly say is the number 1, just because he's more refined and you've seen a lot more of his receiving profile than a Darnell Washington, which is a little bit more of a projection, albeit look at what he did at the combine. Darnell Washington, the one-handed catch along the sideline. Kind of wish he ran a faster 40, Michael Mayer. I mean, what did he end up running? A 4.7
flat at 246 is solid, I think.
Solid. Yeah, but in today's day and age, it that's not going to jump out at you, but I don't really think it matters just from how good
game.
exactly how good his profile is in terms of just winning contested catches. I think a lot of that will be translatable in the NFL, how he gets open, things like that. He doesn't necessarily need that Evan Ingram breakaway speed.
He reminds me of a better version of Trey McBride. That's what I see when I watch a player like Michael Mayer.
He's much better than Trey
version.
McBride, yeah.
But similar style, just considerably better at that style. Dalton Kincaid is a guy who didn't have a combine. He actually ultimately might end up being my tight end 1. When I've seen him, Daniel Jeremiah's put up some stuff on him. Jeremiah is a huge fan of Kincaid. And I look at him and I'm like, this dude is so freaking hard to bring down in space at 246 pounds. And nothing to really talk about combine-wise because he wasn't there, but just keep an eye on him. And then my boy, who I think is in that final tier. And there's the crazy thing is with the tight end position, I have these 4 elite ones. Then I have a second tier that, in my opinion, would be better, would be like the elite tier in any class and better than anyone in that Cole Kmet class, better than anyone in like 4 of the, like last 10 classes have had like the Cole Kmets as the tight end ones of the world. And we'll talk about those guys, but let me first get to this last guy in my elite tier. That's Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. I've talked about him a lot. He's going to be a big time my guy. And he had absolutely one of the most dominant combines from an athletic score standpoint, almost a perfect 10 athletic score. He was a 9.96, a true size freak at 6'5" and 0.7, almost 6'6", which is rare in today's NFL. 253 pounds, despite being 6'6", 253. Nick, he ran a 4.61 40-yard dash. That's insane for a 253-pound athlete. And that's not it. He tested elite in the quickness acceleration drills. 20-yard split 2.67, 10-yard split 1.58. Elite. Vertical jump, 36 inches, borderline elite. Broad jump, 10 feet, 5 inches, elite. So now we're talking about an athlete. He didn't do the change direction testing, but we're talking about an athlete who has the elite frame at 6'5", 253, elite speed speed weight combo at 4.61, 40, elite quickness, and elite jumping explosiveness drills. So, I mean, man, I know there's not a lot of tape on him. I know there's a lot of uncertainty because he was injured and didn't play a lot, but I don't give a crap. I'll bet on these traits any day. You know who else didn't play a lot in college? Rob Gronkowski.
I knew you were going to bring up Rob Gronkowski. I don't think Musgrave has that type of blocking profile.
No, hell no. Oh, hell no.
As a Rob Gronkowski? No, not at all. But, dude, when you watch the game, the week 2 this year, I think it was against Fresno State. He had a catch at the end of the game where he ran like a 7 route. And he had someone clouded over top of him, and he had someone in trail underneath him. And the quarterback, kudos to him, he put the football in a really catchable spot. But watching him contort his body and track it right into his hands, it was like a work of art. So you want to just talk about natural receiving skills. Luke Musgrave, yes, he's not a wide receiver, but 6'6", 250 pounds, around there with that athletic profile and those receiving traits. It's going to endear a team in round 2 or probably round 2, I would imagine, right?
I think it's close. I think it will be round 2 because people don't like to draft tight ends in round 1. But I think
I don't think he'll be around. Dude, that's such a gamble if you take this guy in round 1 with that type of injury profile.
The injury profile is probably what does it, I would imagine. But I look at somebody who's 6'6", almost 253 with 4.61 and all that, plus actual tape that shows he can play the game. And I'm like, I don't think I'll take 30 guys over something like this. I'm just looking for Planet Theory. Like, ultimately, I want Planet Theory type players. Like that's the difference. Like, I don't know if I need like a Jalen. Like I would take this guy over a Jalen Hyatt, for example.
It's kind of funny though, man. When you look at his final receiving statistics in college, right. 47 catches for 633 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's his final statistics, man. Isn't that kind of crazy? But I understand where you're coming from too.
I don't think some interesting final statistics that you might just have, and just shows how like hard it is for this tight end position to kind of make it in college and how production can be so slow at it and change so much. Listen to these numbers: over 3 seasons, 59 receptions, 875, and 10 touchdowns. Who do you think that was?
Say that one more time.
59 receptions, 875 yards, 10 touchdowns.
I'm not sure.
Travis Kelce over 3 years. And he hasn't had one season in the NFL where he hasn't had 1,000 yards.
Oh, no, absolutely. Travis Kelce, if I remember correctly, didn't he get like kicked off of Cincinnati's program? And then he
played 11 games in these 2 years. I don't know if that's true. It says his junior year, he was 11 games, 13 receptions in that. And then his senior year was kind of the quote unquote breakout, but it wasn't even that amazing. It was 45, 7, 22, and 8.
Yeah, back when he went to college, I think he got like caught like with marijuana or something. And back then it was like a big deal for whatever freaking reason. Right. And the coach was going to kick him off, but they gave him another chance, luckily, which I think it was a good idea on that coach's part.
Yeah. And so just to wrap up on Musgrave, I actually get like potential from a receiving standpoint, Travis Kelce vibes from him when I watch him. So I'll be curious when you get a chance to watch the little film he has out there, just how he moves in space. That's where I kind of see the effortless movement at that size. He's a Travis Kelce frame wise. He's very similar to Kelce. And then just watch the movement. Now let me get to the second tier of tight ends, which I'm equally as excited about, which is insane. I mean, in any other class, these dudes would be tight end one for me. Both of them, maybe. Definitely the first guy we're talking about. Like, I would take both of them over Cole Kmet any day. Again, I always go back to this Cole Kmet class, but like, there's several Cole Kmet classes. Even last year, like McBride as tight end one. I'll take Sam Laporta over McBride 1,000 out of 1,000 times. And I would take the guy I'm going to talk about after, who's not as hyped, but I want to talk to you about because I think he might be the best value in the entire class and maybe any position. I'm that high on him. But let's first talk Sam Laporta because he actually is getting some buzz that he could be like a round 2-ish pick, maybe round 3. And he absolutely had a stunningly good combine. At 6'3", 245, he's not the ideal frame length and size by any means, more of like in the George Kittle mold, but comes from Iowa, where they know how to block and they're taught well. It's a tight end factory over there, and had a 4.59 40-yard dash at 245 pounds, which is absolutely elite speed. 20-yard split was 265, 10-yard split 162. Amazing. Vertical jump 35, broad jump 10 foot 3 inches. Amazing. But then where it really stood out, just like it did for the alma mater tight end before him, George Kittle, was the change of direction testing, man. 4.25 short shuttle, a 6.913 cone at 245 pounds. Are you kidding me? Sam Laporta, and I've been watching a little bit of cut-ups of him that some people have posted to Twitter, and he is a tackle-breaking machine in space. Someone said he reminded him a little bit of Mark Bavaro. I think that was actually Tommy G on Twitter. So I don't know if he's a Bavaro type. I don't think he's that kind of blocker, potentially, but maybe doesn't have that kind of frame. But he, my friend, is a very interesting prospect.
And yet somehow Iowa only can get this guy one touchdown.
I know.
2022, man. That's just Iowa football on the offensive side. Love their defense, love their blockers, love those tight ends, but damn, it's difficult to watch them sometimes on the offensive side. But yeah, no, I'm interested in Sam Laporta. I'm going to get to his tape to see how he is as a blocker specifically, but that's quite the athletic profile. And then you brought up Will Mallory as well. That's somebody who blew up the combine too.
I teased him. I didn't bring him up because Will Mallory, my man, look, I'm looking at this draft. I see zero buzz surrounding Will Mallory, and I have no freaking clue why. I just don't get it. When I watched him in Miami, he was an effortless, fun mover in space with tackle-breaking ability. In any other class, I think he'd get buzz. In this one, he's not. I think he's going to be probably the biggest steal in this draft. Just listen to this profile. 6'4", 239. That's not ideal from either. 6'4" is fine. The 239 is not ideal. Fine, whatever. He's not going to be. He would have been talked about that already. But 4.5, 440-yard dash at 239 is insanely impressive. That's faster than Laporta. 2.67, 20-yard split. 1.59, 10-yard split. Elite. 36.5-inch vert. 10 foot 1 inch broad. I mean, we're talking elite explosiveness, elite quickness, elite speed at 239 pounds, 6'4". I think he's going to be a weapon at the offensive level with 32 and 2.5-inch arm length, decent hand size. I like Will Mallory a lot.
Yeah, my issue with Will Mallory is that weight, man. Yeah. 239. It's you're kind of stuck in no man's land. You're a tweener. Like, can you block in line, or are you just an H-back? Or are you Travis Beckham? That's the issue I have with Will Mallory. But holy crap, dude, some of his tape, if you turn on the pick game, he had a play where he was aligned as like the backside of X, essentially. And it was one-on-one, just him against the cornerback. He put a little stick, and then he just faded out to the pylon, and the quarterback threw a beautiful pass to him, and he just extends away from his frame, plucks it out of the air, brings it into his freaking chest. It was beautiful, man. Just so much concentration on that play. If anybody wants to check it out against Pitt, I don't know exactly when it was in the game, but it was like a 40-yard catch.
He reminds me of a player who came out in recent draft class who I wasn't high on, but people buzzed him up because, again, in past draft classes, tight ends is just a death trap. It's just no talent at all versus this one where it's amazing. Hint, Giants, let's try to get one because not every class is going to look this good. But he reminds me of a much better version of Brevin Jordan. Like what Brevin Jordan was supposed to be good at, Will Mallory is actually good at.
Yeah, he was from the U as well.
Just a worse version, in my opinion, in every way. And he was pumped up too.
Jeez, tell him how it really is.
Yeah, just how I feel watching the two guys. Let's talk about a couple other interesting prospects who blew up the combine at tight end from an athletic standpoint. We don't know if they'll actually be good players in the NFL, but one is Luke Schoonmaker from Michigan. I don't know if it's Maker or Mocker, don't care. And he was 6'5", 251, decent, 4'6'3", 40-yard dash at 251 is wild. 20-yard splits and 10-yard splits, elite numbers. Vertical jump, not great. Broad jump, though, amazing. 10 foot 7 inches. And then wildly good change of direction on the shuttle, the short shuttle, 427 for a guy at 251. Those were wild testing numbers.
Yeah, those are excellent testing numbers. He's definitely going to generate some good day 3 buzz, as will, you want to say the name? Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion, who transferred from Penn State, I believe he was initially at. He goes down to the combine, runs a 4.55 40 with a 1.57 10-yard split, and then a 40-inch vertical jump, Dan, with a 10.8 broad and a 6.87 3-cone with a 4.12 20-yard shuttle. Those are insane agility and lower body explosiveness right there from this kid.
He basically had the perfect combine. He's one of the only people at this entire combine with a perfect 10.0 relative athletic score. Anthony Richardson was one of the other players. I don't know if anyone else topped it. I think some guys hit 9.9, but he hit the 10.0 mark. Height is perfect. The bench is great. The 40-yard dash is great, 4.55 at 255. The splits are great. The vertical's 40 inches. I mean, the shuttle's 4.12. Are you kidding me? But maybe he's just an athlete. We don't know, right? We'll find out if he's actually a football player or an athlete, but he's going to get the attention of a lot of people with a combine like that.
Yeah, kudos to him, man. Old Dominion, the home of O'Shane Ximenez.
Let's talk some quarterbacks, and then let's wrap it up with some offensive line. We'll go quick through both these. I just want to talk a little bit about Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, the projected 1 and 2 at the position. Just so interesting. They didn't do really anything at the combine, but I just think it's interesting to just compare profiles from a frame standpoint. Bryce Young, 5'10", 204 pounds. It's really not the frame you're looking for. 9.75-inch hands size. And then CJ Stroud, 10-inch hand size, 6'3", 214. Not bad there, but again, not really ideal.
Yeah, but CJ Stroud actually at least threw at the combine
and looked great.
Yeah, he looked the best of, I would say, the group. Right, like Anthony Richardson throwing the football, like he took the combine by storm. We'll get into him a little bit. You could see there's a couple balls though that Anthony Richardson threw that was like
a lot of balls where the ball placement was just.
I was trying to be nice, but yes, it wasn't that great. When you watch CJ, and he also had to go, I think, right before CJ Stroud. So then CJ Stroud steps up, and it's like, holy crap, this guy's pinpoint accuracy is spot on, dude.
Right.
And that was definitely great for Stroud's profile. And I feel like the top of this quarterback, it's starting to get very interesting with the ascension of Anthony Richardson, with that just incredible performance he had at the combine. And then CJ Stroud just continued kind of just reinforcing the fact that he is just so damn accurate with the football. It's not like we really needed to know that, him throwing in his underwear in Indianapolis, because we all already knew that just watching Ohio State offense.
Yeah, without a doubt. A couple other projected quarterbacks to go into the top 15 projected, maybe top 20. Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. Start Will Levis, checked in at 6'4", which was taller than I expected, and good sign, because I thought he was 6'3". I was reading, and I was like, this dude is all this hype, and he's not even 6'5". I was like stunned at that, but he's got pretty good. 229's fine. 34-inch vert is pretty great for a quarterback. 10-foot 4-inch broad jump, pretty great for a quarterback, but then somehow trumped by Anthony Richardson, who had one of the only 10.0 perfect elite relative athletics. This is an insane. Like, if you lab built a quarterback and took away just how he is from an athleticism standpoint and frame standpoint, this is your guy. You would build him differently, like you'd have different arm talent, but as far as just frame and athleticism, 6'4", 244. Ran a 4.43 at 244, which is just bonkers. 20-yard split, 10-yard split, elite. 1.53 10-yard split is 9.99. Then a 40.5-inch vertical, best vertical by far ever by a quarterback at a combine. Almost an 11-foot broad jump as well. Again, best, I think, ever. So just insane athleticism.
Yeah, he's an incredible athlete, and he's starting to get top 5 buzz, which isn't surprising when you have some sort of project like that. You get him with the right quarterback coach, a Brian Dable, an Andy Reid, somebody who is a quote-unquote quarterback whisperer, and then they can unlock all of the traits that they may not have, along with all that incredible athletic ability. I mean, think about like Justin Fields right now. Like, look at the floor that Justin Fields has, and he doesn't have that pinpoint accuracy. He doesn't have the advanced consistency, at least in throwing mechanics and stuff like that. But as an athlete, you could still have a very functional offense in the NFL. Anthony Richardson could be that, and if you can teach him to put the football in stride and throw with more accurate tendencies, then you're looking at an absolute freaking home run, because what he can offer from a running standpoint and just from an extemporizing standpoint, he'd be an absolute nightmare to deal with for defenses.
Yeah, I think that often gets lost in the debate. People think that these guys are just pure ceiling prospects and boom or bust type projects. But reality is, in today's NFL, we fans of this show should be well aware, we pretty much crafted an offense last year that didn't rely on throwing the football almost at all from the quarterback. So that could easily be the case if somebody like Richardson gets the right coaching. We saw it with Fields as well in the second half. Now, a couple other quarterbacks to discuss. Hendon Hooker, who's been loosely connected to the Giants at times, 6'3", 217. Obviously didn't do any of the testing because he's coming off the torn ACL. But the one thing I found interesting, by the way, and you mentioned when you watched this film, when you were watching Hyatt and Tillman, that Hooker's very snappy. I think that was the word you used with his throwing motion. You liked his throwing motion. 10.5-inch hands is really freaking good. The biggest of any of the quarterbacks we've said so far. And I think that was always a big calling card of Russell Wilson, when people were like, how did Russell Wilson hit when we let him fall to the third round? We knew he had athleticism, escapability. We just didn't really think he could ever be a thrower at the NFL level. I think the hand size was a big reason why Russell Wilson worked at the NFL level. So something really interesting to me to look at with Hendon Hooker.
I love a quarterback with big hands. I think Daniel Jones has solid hand. I think it's like 9.5, right? If I'm not mistaken. Good job, Daniel.
10.5 is massive, though, for Hendon Hooker. Then Tanner McKee is just such a weird profile to me. Some people like him, some people don't. 6'6". I love the 6'6" part of Tanner McKee. That's a crazy good way, height weigh-in type thing at 231. Like, if he does hit, it's because he becomes an elite mental processor at 6'6", who sees over the line of scrimmage and just gets the ball out fast, dink dunk type, like Earhart, like the Patriot system would be like a nice fit if it worked out. But I don't really think it will. Just a really bad athlete overall. 4.41 shuttle is not good. The 3-cone wasn't terrible. The broad inverts were okay. I don't see it with this kid from that. Just not the investment I would make these days at quarterback, unless I knew I had like a Brady Breeze type mental processor. And I'm not sold that McKee is going to be that.
Yeah, I don't really have too much on McKee, but let's transition to the offensive line before we get out of here. So the most impressive combine by far on the offensive line was BYU's Blake Freeland, who I didn't really know anything about going into this event, but he came in at 6'8". And then the one concerning point, he was only 302 pounds, which you don't really love. That's pretty light for a 6'8" player. So he's going to have to add some more sand to his ass in order to, I think, hold up in the NFL. But almost 34-inch arms. And then, man, how athletic this dude was. He jumped a 37-inch vert, which is a combine record for an offensive lineman. A 4.96 40-yard dash with a 1.68 10-yard split, and then 10 feet in the broad jump, which was best among the offensive line. That is pretty impressive stuff from a guy who is relatively unknown, and he's turning evaluators back to BYU's tape.
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen when you have elite testing numbers like that. I also want to talk a little bit about Andrew Voorhees at a USC, interior offensive lineman, who unfortunately tore his ACL in drills, but after that, he still managed to bench a combine-high 38 reps on the bench press. Insane. It's top 20 in the entire history of combine. So what do you make of Andrew Voorhees? Is he somebody on the interior offensive line you might be interested in the Giants investing in even after that injury?
I was interested in him as a day 2 possible pick. I don't know if the Giants are going to spend a day 2 pick on the interior offensive line, but if they were, Voorhees was a name that was on my radar. Sucks that he ended up tearing his ACL, but man, what a boss-ass move to go out there and then bench at the combine high and the top 20 in combine history with a freaking torn ACL. And I get it. It's not squatting. It's not deadlifting, but you still got to drive through your lower body when you're benching, bro. Like, that is some impressive stuff. And it really just speaks to the toughness of Andrew Voorhees. Just sucks so bad that he ended up getting injured.
So disappointing. But remember, you can still find value at times. Like the Eagles drafting Landon Dickerson in round 2 is turning out to be one of the best deals of that class. And a big reason he fell was because of that ACL or whatever it was at the time. And
so he had a lot of injuries in college.
Injuries, but he just has been dominant now ever since playing. We knew he would be. His tape was filthy. So it's kind of knew it. But I want to talk a little bit about a player who I know you have a different player highlighted up there, but I want to talk a little about Paris Johnson, just because he was the one player in my notes I put that stood out to me the most. I just felt like when I watched him, he looked like he moved smooth, like an offensive lineman should look. Great body control, and you put that in your thing as well. Then I heard him talk during the combine. He brought his mother on, and he was kind of talking about his journey. And I love the way he discussed, the way he talked, the way he sounded. He just he reminds me of like another Andrew Thomas from that standpoint, from the off the field standpoint. Like he's just going to go to work, get his job done, 0 distractions, and do everything he can to work on his technique and improve anything he struggles with early on. So we don't need to tackle the Giants, but Paris Johnson was interesting to me.
I couldn't agree more with you on Paris Johnson. And I honestly think Broderick Jones, the Georgia likely top 15 draft pick, he looked really good in the on-field drills. I think all of the top offensive linemen did themselves well at this event. Like Peter Skoronski's arm length ended up being 32 and a fourth. So it's at least over 32 inches. Is he going to play inside? He's going to play tackle. I guess that debate will be settled by whoever drafts him. But still, he didn't kill himself. It wasn't a great combine, but I just felt like the on-the-field drills, like Matthew Bergeron, the Syracuse offensive tackle, moved very well. Paris Johnson, as you brought up, Broderick Jones, I felt like Darnell Wright from the University of Tennessee didn't have the best testing, but when you just get him out in space, you could see how they move. And that's what I really care about. How do they kick out into space? How fast are they? And then I love the drill that they have where I feel like the offensive lineman is going to get creamed, or they're not the offensive lineman. The coach is going to get absolutely obliterated every time because he just stands there and he leans in one direction. The offensive lineman has to go in the other direction. But it shows you how quick these offensive linemen can kind of repivot and redirect, redistribute their weight in one direction. And I felt like a lot of those top guys that we just listed really looked, I would say, pretty damn impressive in the on-the-field drills. I just don't know if the Giants are going to invest anything into their offensive line where they can get any of those types of guys who will likely be picked in the top 60.
Time will tell with that regard. All right, that's all we have for on today's show. Recapping the combine on the offense side of the ball. As you can tell, we're clearly very excited about this running back and tight end class. I love drafting into the strength of a draft. I don't see classes like this that come around often at tight end. I really hope the Giants get one there. And running back feels same to me, man. There's a lot of depth on day 2 and 3. I would hope the Giants draft into that depth, and we'll see what happens. But thanks for tuning into the Big Blue Banter podcast. Keep it locked and loaded. Now that we're through this, free agency is very close, so we're going to monitor that, have news breaking on that when the Giants sign players. You'll probably start to hear news this Sunday. This Sunday night is probably when the tampering begins. So maybe the Giants will get in early like they did last year, fairly early with Glowinski. I think now that they've signed Jones and Barkley eventually, but even if they don't, his cap number is only $10 million right now. They're going to be pretty active in free agency. That doesn't mean they're getting top of the market players, but I think we're going to get like 2 Glowinski deals and then a bunch of depth deals, more so than we got last year. So we'll see what happens there. We'll get back in the draft profiles after that. Guests coming up on the show as well throughout. So keep it loaded, keep it locked here. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.